What's up, everybody? It's your host of 5 Minute Majors, Derek Harper. We have quite a few topics. It's been a couple weeks since the CHL put out a new top 10. We also have a relocation next season and a brand new WHL Player of the Week, among other topics that we generally talk about. So let's start with that relocation, actually. In the OHL, excuse me if I butcher this, but I believe it's the Mississauga Steelheads. They're moving a little bit down the road, not too far. It's not even a 10-minute drive, but they're moving to, I guess, across the street, down the street, where they'll call Brampton, Ontario home. Brampton last had an ECHL team a handful of years back, so we'll see what happens there. But that should be expected to happen. They've announced that. And in the OHL, who knows what's going to come out of there for their championship series? But the WHL seems to be shaping out. The Western Conference is still just a tug of war. The Eastern Conference is pretty much spoken for unless the Blades seem to choke it away in the playoffs. We'll see. But Saskatoon sits first in the Eastern Conference, 72 points on the season. Pretty darn good. And overall, they're first in the CHL in their top 10 rankings. So it's right now they're the favorite to come out of the East. The Western Conference, like I said, it is a logjam. You have three teams right there in the West: Portland, Prince George, and Everett. But with that, you got to realize two of those are in the same division with Everett and the Portland Winterhawks. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, only one's going to make it out. But I'd say the Winterhawks and Blades are my prediction for the WHL final. But the Western Conference, they have teams like Wenatchee. I see them making it to the second round, maybe. I think it's going to be a very, very competitive WHL playoff, and I'm very excited to watch how that unfolds. But Carter Yaremchuk, going back to the WHL's Eastern Conference, the Calgary Hitmen, with his multi-point game the other night, he's helped them into a playoff spot. They sit eighth in the Eastern Conference. But never doubt those Alberta teams. Those Alberta teams can put on a showing. We've seen the Edmonton Oil Kings, who wouldn't put it past them to sneak into a deep playoff run. But we'll see how that turns out. And so if we have the Blades and the Winterhawks in WHL final, I could see that being reminiscent of the 2012, 2013, and 2014 WHL Championship Series. The Oil Kings took 2 out of 3 there in 2012 and 2014. The Winterhawks won in 2013. And many say that the Oil Kings broke the Chiefs' curse when they snapped the Memorial Cup, but when the Oil Kings won it. So see, I think the WHL will win the Memorial Cup this season just with how powerful they are, but you can't count out the QMJHL. But it's going to be a very interesting season. And going into Thursday, when this is posted, you'll have had a few games Wednesday night in the WHL, so that could change the Western Conference standings. Prince George is set to play, and so we'll see what happens there. But it's going to be a very exciting finish, I think. But it's very interesting how we're kind of seeing these new teams and relocations happen over the past year or so. We saw the Winnipeg Ice relocate to Wenatchee, and now the Mississauga Steelheads going to Brampton. It should be noted the Brampton venue seats slightly less, but we'll dive into that topic more next week. We'll figure out exactly the details about this, and we'll dive into the rest of it. But we'll also talk about next week. We'll talk about the 3 games that happened Wednesday night, how those playoff implications have happened so far. And then we'll see about how Calgary's doing, and maybe we'll dive a little bit more into the Eastern Conference as well. Maybe we'll touch on the QMJHL. But if I had to pick, I think the champion comes out of the dub. But the Everett Silvertips, I should mention, they're also in the CHL's top 10. And it's worth mentioning also that the OHL's Saginaw Sting, this year's Memorial Cup host, they're also in the CHL's top 10. So we have a very, very competitive field this year. I think it might be the most competitive in quite a few years. A couple of QMJHL teams thrown in there. But it seems like the OHL and the WHL might have the powerhouses this season. We'll see about that. The QMJHL, they've had teams up top the power rankings this season. I think it could be a dogfight at the Memorial Cup. with two OHL teams, obviously with the host and then the champion, and then the WHL champion and QMJHL champion. For those new to the WHL, say Wenatchee, one thing I should point out: if the Memorial Cup host wins their championship, the runner-up makes it. So we'll see how that shakes out in the OHL. But we'll also maybe dive in the next 2 weeks into the topics of the other leagues, the other junior A leagues around the country, specifically the BCHL and the implications there, and how that independent league, their possible acquisition of 5 Alberta Junior League teams might impact the WHL. It should be noted specifically how the WHL, though, may be getting ahead of that. The WHL has talked about how it's not for sure yet that I've seen, but there's a possibility down the road that WHL players currently who are only able to go to Canadian universities may have the door open to them to go to the NCAA, which this has never been a thing. It's never existed in that aspect. So that would be a very huge boost to WHL and be able to keep a lot of their players who may otherwise go to the BCHL or other junior A leagues because they want the college route in the States. So we'll dive more into that next week, and it's good to be back and have a new CHL